What do you do when someone cuts deep with their words and leaves you burning inside? Do you explode or do you hold? This choice decides whether you rise above them or sink to their level. Imagine this. You've just been disrespected, not subtly, but in front of everyone. Your chest tightens, your heart races, and your tongue is ready to unleash fire. But here's the real test. What happens next will reveal more about you than about them. The greatest battles in life are not fought with fists or words, but in the space between your anger and your response. That's where your true power hides. Someone has just disrespected you in the most blatant, humiliating way. Your blood is boiling. Your body feels like a coiled spring ready to snap. Inside your head, 1,000 sharp comebacks are fighting to break free. You feel insulted, wounded, and furious enough to want to put them in their place. But pause for a moment, because this is not just another heated exchange. This is the moment that defines who you really are. Not the insult itself, not what they did to you, but how you choose to respond. That is the mirror of your true character. This single moment holds more weight than you realize, because it exposes either your strength or your lack of control. Now, don't mistake me. I'm not here to tell you to be a doormat or to silently swallow every injustice. No. What I'm going to show you is how to respond wisely, how to protect your dignity, keep the respect of others, and most importantly, the respect of yourself. Even Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled as emperor while facing endless criticism, betrayal, and enemies, warned us. The person who gets angry has already lost his. Words don't tell us to be weak. They challenge us to be stronger than the wild impulses of our emotions. That's the real battlefield, the razor-thin line between a powerful response and a powerless reaction. Most people confuse emotional outbursts with strength. But in truth, strength is not in losing control. It's in mastering it. Strength is the ability to choose your response rather than be dragged around by every impulse of rage. And today, I'm revealing the 5 things you should never do when someone disrespects you. The third one is especially critical because nearly everyone makes this mistake, and it destroys your dignity in seconds. Avoid these traps, and you'll win without ever needing to fight. So let's begin. Rule number 1, never react immediately, because the first reaction is almost always the worst one. Think about it. When someone disrespects you, that surge of anger and hurt is like a storm taking over your body. In that heated rush, you're at your weakest, and that's when you say or do things you'll regret for a long time. And that's exactly what disrespectful people are counting on. They want to see you snap, lose control, and drop below your own standards. Your immediate reaction is their victory. It shows them they have power over your emotions. I once watched a colleague fall into this very trap. During a team meeting, he was publicly criticized in a way that was unfair and deliberately designed to embarrass him. Instead of pausing, he snapped back instantly, his voice rising, his words sharp, listing his achievements while attacking the critic's failures. What should have made the critic look petty instead turned into a scene where he looked unprofessional, emotional, and out of control. Later, he admitted that a calm pause and a measured response would have exposed the critic's weakness without costing him his dignity. But the room didn't remember the unfair criticism. They remembered his outburst. That's the danger of reacting too fast. It overshadows the truth and makes you look like the one who lost control. Immediate reactions are driven by emotion, not wisdom. And wisdom is what keeps your power intact. Reacting instantly gives away your power. And here's the truth. You're no longer in control when that happens. When you react without pause, you're essentially letting their disrespect dictate your behavior. Instead of being calm and deliberate, you become reactive, almost like a puppet pulled by their strings. In that moment, you've handed them control, not just over your actions, but over your emotional state. You're no longer choosing your response. Your emotions are choosing for you. The problem with emotional reactions is simple. They're almost always disproportionate. They rarely touch the real issue. Instead, they often explode in ways you don't intend. You might say something sharper, crueler, or more damaging than what was said to you. You might escalate the situation until it spirals far beyond what it ever needed to be. Or worse, you might reveal personal information in anger that you'll later regret sharing. Immediate reactions rarely fix the problem. They usually make it heavier, messier, and harder to escape. Epictetus gave us one of the greatest psychological truths ever spoken. Between stimulus and response lies your freedom. That space, that small, sacred pause between what happens to you and how you respond, is where your real power lives. But when you react immediately, you erase that space. You deny yourself the chance to think, to choose, to act with wisdom and dignity. Instead, you operate from your most primitive wiring, your reptilian brain. This part of the brain was designed to protect you from lions, tigers, and threats to your survival. It doesn't understand complex social dynamics. It only knows fight, flight, or freeze. So when someone disrespects you, your brain misinterprets it as a physical threat and demands instant action. But here's the reality. Disrespect isn't a wild animal lunging at you. It's not something that requires survival instinct. It's a social challenge that calls for intelligence and restraint. So how do you protect yourself from falling into this trap? The moment you feel the surge of anger, embarrassment, or hurt, stop. Don't fire back. Take 3 slow, steady breaths before you say a single word. This isn't the childish advice of count to 10. It's much deeper. Those few breaths give your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes wise decisions, time to come online. They give you the chance to engage reason instead of just raw emotion. During that pause, ask yourself one powerful question. What response serves my dignity best? Not what feels satisfying in the heat of the moment, but what protects your character in the long run. Because the truth is, what feels good in the moment is usually blasting them with exactly what you think. But what serves your dignity is holding your standards high, no matter how low they stoop. Another powerful trick is to step outside yourself. Imagine you are watching this scene play out from the outside. Ask, how would the person I respect most handle this? What response would make me proud when I look back later? This shift in perspective helps you choose wisdom over impulse, strength over weakness. Remember this, your first flash of emotion is not an instruction, it's information. Your anger is telling you that something crossed your values. Your hurt is showing you that you cared about their treatment. These signals matter, but they are not commands you must obey immediately. The pause is where your freedom lives. The pause is where you decide whether to be ruled by impulse or guided by wisdom. In that silent space between their disrespect and your reply, you hold the power to choose who you will be in that moment. Will you be the person who lashes out, emotional and reckless? Or will you be the one who responds with calm, dignity, and quiet strength? Controlling your timing is the foundation of protecting your self-respect. But beware. There's another mistake people make. And this one doesn't just weaken you. It strips away your credibility and makes you look desperate for approval. Mistake number 2. Never try to change their mind. Arguing with someone who disrespects you is like wrestling with a pig. You both get covered in mud, but the pig enjoys it. When someone shows you disrespect, don't waste your precious energy trying to prove them wrong. Convince them you deserve better, or force them to apologize. As we discussed earlier, mistake number 2 is trying to change someone's mind when they've already chosen to disrespect you. And here lies the real trap. You cannot reason a person out of a position they never reasoned themselves into. This is one of the most common errors people fall into when faced with disrespect. The instinct is to immediately jump into explanations, justifications, and endless arguments, hoping the other person will suddenly see reason. They start presenting evidence of their worth, listing their past achievements, or pointing out why the treatment they received was unfair. But here's the hard truth. Someone who chooses to disrespect you already knows those things and has already decided they don't care. I once watched a close friend of mine make this very mistake. During a team meeting, a colleague insulted her work in front of everyone. Instead of holding her ground, she spent over an hour trying to defend herself. She explained why the criticism was unfair, highlighted her successful projects, and even demanded an apology for the unprofessional attack. The result? The other person refused to apologize and doubled down on their criticism, becoming even more hostile. Meanwhile, my friend began to look increasingly desperate, almost pleading for recognition. And by the end, her strong position had been completely eroded. What she didn't realize was this. The moment she tried to change his mind, she had placed her dignity on the negotiation table. When you do this, you're essentially asking for permission to be respected. And that act automatically gives the other person control over your emotional state. You shift from someone who deserves respect to someone who is begging for it. The moment you try to make them change their opinion about your worth, you're working from a flawed assumption that their opinion matters more than your own, that their recognition is necessary for your value to be real. Think of it this way. It's like standing in court as a defendant, trying to prove your innocence to a judge who has already decided you're guilty. No matter how much evidence you present, the verdict has already been written. And the truth is, people who disrespect you often do it not because they actually believe you lack worth. More often than not, it's because of their own insecurities. They may be jealous of your success, threatened by your competence, or simply trying to elevate themselves by pushing others down. Your achievements aren't the issue. Your worth isn't the issue. Their character is the issue. And no amount of reasoning or evidence will ever fix that. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." The Roman emperor understood something vital. Other people's opinions, especially their negative ones, are not your business. When you try to change their mind, you make their opinion of you your main concern. And in doing so, you hand them power over your peace of mind. Ironically, trying to prove your value actually demonstrates the opposite of what you want, that you doubt your own worth. Truly confident, valuable people never argue about their value. Their worth speaks for itself. It is self-evident, and it doesn't require external validation. The moment you start explaining, defending, or justifying, you're signaling that their opinion has weight and authority over your self-esteem. So here's the better approach. State your position once, calmly, firmly, and with clarity. Then disengage. You can say something simple like, "I disagree with that assessment," or "That doesn't reflect the situation accurately," and then stop. Don't over-explain, don't pile on evidence, and don't wait for them to acknowledge your worth. Your dignity is not up for debate. We just saw how trying to change someone's mind weakens your position. Now let's go one step further. What matters most is not their recognition, but your response. You're not here to convince them. You're not putting your worth on trial. What you are doing is setting the record straight for anyone else who might be watching or listening. Your focus must remain on your response, not on whether they acknowledge your value. The goal is never to force them to admit they were wrong. It's to maintain your dignity regardless of how they choose to act. And here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to change their mind, you immediately reclaim your power. You radiate the very confidence and strength they were hoping to strip away. Respect that is freely given is the only kind of respect that matters. Any so-called respect you have to argue for, beg for, or prove you deserve isn't respect at all. It's a conditional acknowledgement, one that can vanish the moment it no longer serves them. Your value does not depend on their validation. Your dignity does not require their permission. Your worth is not tied to their recognition, And your peace of mind should never hang on the fragile thread of someone else's opinion. Seeking approval from those who disrespect you only damages your position. But now let's talk about something even more dangerous, the third mistake. And this is the trap that almost everyone falls into, often without realizing it. If you've ever wasted hours arguing with someone who belittled you just to try and prove your worth, you know how draining it feels. To remind yourself of the truth, drop a quick comment below. Worth proven, because your value doesn't need their validation. Now let's move forward. Mistake number 3, never match their energy. When you mirror their intensity, you don't rise above them, you become them. This is the error 99% of people make automatically when confronted with disrespect. And it is the most devastating mistake because it erases any chance of maintaining the moral or social advantage you may have had. The moment you match their energy, you step into their frame and validate their behavior. Don't copy their tone. Don't raise your volume just because they're yelling. Don't become rude just because they're being rude. Don't crawl down to their level simply because they've chosen to go low. The instant you mirror their energy, you're no longer separate from the problem. You've become part of it. Most people think that matching energy shows strength. They believe raising your voice when someone shouts proves you won't be pushed around. But this is a complete misunderstanding of power dynamics. Matching their energy doesn't show strength. It shows that you're being controlled. It proves that they have the power to dictate not only your emotional state, but also your choices and behavior. I remember a heated discussion over a project deadline. A team member became aggressive, his tone sharp, his voice rising, dripping with condescension. Every instinct in me screamed to push back, to raise my voice, to meet fire with fire. But instead, I chose the opposite. I deliberately lowered my voice, slowed my pace, and spoke with even more calmness than before. The contrast was undeniable. Suddenly, his aggression stood out in the room like a spotlight. He looked unprofessional, emotional, and out of control, while I appeared measured, composed, and reasonable. By the end of the meeting, no one remembered the project debate. What they remembered was his temper and the fact that I never lost mine. Colleagues later came up to me privately, not to comment on the deadline, but to commend how I handled myself. This is why you must avoid matching their energy. Psychologists call it symmetrical escalation, when two people keep raising the stakes until everything spirals out of control. In that cycle, no one wins. Observers can't tell who started it, who is worse, or who holds the moral high ground. You both look equally unprofessional, equally emotional, and equally guilty for the chaos that followed. Refusing to mirror someone's energy is how you keep the upper hand. Now let's look at why that contrast actually becomes your greatest weapon. This is exactly what disrespectful people hope for, to drag you down to their level. Misery loves company, and when both of you behave poorly, their behavior looks less extreme by comparison. They want you to join them, so the room forgets who started the problem. If you cave in and act the same way, you become complicit in creating a toxic scene. And with that complicity goes any moral authority you had in the moment. Seneca taught us the most satisfying revenge is not to imitate your enemy. When you match their energy, you take on their methods, their agitation, and their way of handling conflict. In trying to prove you're strong, you inadvertently prove you're weak enough to be manipulated by their conduct. The power of contrast cannot be overstated. Think about it. When someone is loud and aggressive while you remain calm and composed, the difference is immediate and obvious to everyone watching. Your restraint highlights their lack of control. Your professionalism exposes their unprofessionalism. Your dignity makes their poor character stand out. This contrast does the heavy lifting for you, no argument required. So what's the strategy? Consciously do the opposite of what they're doing. If they shout, lower your voice, so low that people have to lean forward to hear you. If they are aggressive, Respond with measured calm. If they are emotional, be factual and rational. If they rush and panic, slow down and act deliberately. These choices force the room to recalibrate. People naturally compare behaviors, and the stark difference will make them judge who is handling the situation with competence. This technique works because it creates cognitive dissonance in onlookers. Their brain notices the mismatch. One person spiraling, one person composed, and the automatic judgment favors the composed. Without you ever calling them out, their conduct becomes impossible to ignore. Don't confuse this with passivity or weakness. It is active strength, the discipline to maintain standards when someone else has abandoned theirs. It takes far more power to hold your ground calmly under attack than to match aggression with aggression. Anyone can mirror negative energy. Very few have the strength to stay positive, steady, and principled in the face of hostility. Your composure becomes your weapon, but not an offensive one. It's a shield that preserves your reputation while exposing the flaws in theirs. When you refuse to meet their level, you force them to stand alone in poor behavior, and everyone else sees who has class and who does not. Your calm doesn't just protect you. It speaks louder than any defensive words you might use. Controlling your energy grants a massive psychological advantage. But be careful. Our fourth mistake can still ruin relationships and burn bridges you might later need. If this message resonates, like the video and subscribe to Stoic Training to learn how to keep your inner calm unshakable. Now, on to mistake number 4. Never make it about them. The moment you make the conflict personal, you've already lost the argument and weakened your position. When someone disrespects you, resist the urge to attack their character, dig up past mistakes, or make the dispute about who they are as a person. The instant you start saying things like, "You always do this," or "That's so typical of you," you've shifted from addressing behavior to assassinating character. That temptation is powerful because when we're hurt, our instinct is to hurt back. We want them to feel exposed, to suffer the way we suffered. But sinking into personal attacks drags you into the mud, and it destroys whatever moral high ground you once held. We saw how making it personal destroys your position. Now let's go deeper into why personal attacks carry such a devastating cost. In the heat of the moment, it feels satisfying to unleash everything you've been storing up. Their flaws, their failures, their patterns of behavior. For a few seconds, it feels like you're winning. But that short-lived satisfaction comes at a tremendous cost, one that can permanently damage both your reputation and your relationships. I once witnessed this in a business meeting between two partners debating company strategy. It began as a professional discussion about which approach would be most effective. But instead of staying focused on the ideas, one partner turned personal. He started dragging up the other's past mistakes, bringing up failed projects from years before, and questioning his competence as a leader altogether. What could have been a constructive debate about strategy quickly devolved into character assassination. The result? Their working relationship was destroyed beyond repair. And here's the irony. The partner who attacked thought he was strengthening his case by undermining his colleague's credibility. But in reality, he revealed something far more damaging: his own character flaws. He showed the entire room that under pressure, he abandons professionalism and resorts to personal attacks. He demonstrated that he harbors old grievances and uses them as weapons when conflicts arise. And worst of all, he exposed that he couldn't separate personal feelings from business decisions. When you make it about the other person instead of the issue, you shift the entire focus away from problem solving. Resolution becomes impossible because you're no longer addressing what happened. You're trying to prove that the person themselves is broken or fundamentally flawed. But here's the problem. People can change their behavior. They can adjust decisions. They can acknowledge mistakes. But they cannot change their past or their entire nature. By attacking who they are rather than what they did, You've eliminated any chance of moving forward constructively, and it doesn't stop there. Personal attacks also escalate conflicts far beyond their original scope. What might have been a disagreement over a single incident quickly explodes into an all-out war over someone's entire identity and history. A manageable situation turns into a nuclear battle, where both sides feel the need to defend not just their actions, but their worth as a human being. Perhaps most importantly, personal attacks burn bridges, often permanently. People can forgive criticism about a single decision much more easily than insults aimed at their character. Someone might one day forget that you disagreed with their choice, but they will never forget being called incompetent, dishonest, or worthless. Words that attack someone's identity leave scars that rarely heal. Marcus Aurelius once advised, "Whenever you want to cheer yourself, think of the good qualities of your companions." That wisdom applies even when those companions have failed you or disrespected you. The key is to focus on the behavior, not the person. Here's the crucial distinction. Address what they did, not who they are. Say, "That comment was inappropriate and unprofessional," instead of, "You are disrespectful and always have been." Say, "I disagree with that decision," instead of, "You always make terrible choices." By keeping it tied to the specific action or behavior, you stay grounded in the issue instead of attacking their identity. This approach achieves three powerful outcomes. First, it keeps the conflict contained, focused only on the actual issue instead of expanding into a character war. Second, it keeps the possibility of resolution alive, because you're addressing something that can realistically be acknowledged or changed. And third, it protects your reputation, showing everyone that even under attack, you remain professional, calm, and principled. Keeping the focus on behavior instead of attacking character preserves both your integrity and your relationships. Now, let's take this one step further, because the way you handle conflict says just as much about you as the conflict itself. When you focus on someone's behavior rather than their character, you model a higher form of conflict resolution. You demonstrate that you can separate the person from their actions, that you're interested in solving the actual problem rather than winning a personal battle, and that you maintain your standards even when others abandon theirs. This alone builds respect. People notice it even if they don't comment on it. Never forget, when you attack someone's character, it speaks louder about your own character than theirs. It reveals that you hold grudges, that you fight dirty when pressured, and that you care more about wounding them than resolving the issue. That's why the principle remains clear: attack the behavior, not the person. Address what happened, not who they are. This keeps the conflict within bounds. It makes resolution possible, and most importantly, it preserves your dignity. Avoiding personal attacks doesn't make you weak. It keeps relationships intact and protects your reputation from being dragged through the mud. But even if you avoid that mistake, there's still one final trap, and this last one is psychological. It can haunt you for weeks, months, or even years after the incident itself is long over. Mistake number 5. Never let it consume you. The worst thing someone can do to you is not the initial disrespect itself. It's making you carry that disrespect inside you until you become like them. When you allow the insult to replay endlessly in your mind, when you start rehearsing clever comebacks, imagining confrontations, or letting your mood sour for days, you've given them the ultimate victory. You've allowed them to live rent-free in your head, continuing their attack on your peace of mind long after they've moved on with their life. This is perhaps the most dangerous mistake of all, because it happens quietly, entirely within your own mind, and yet it's often more destructive than the disrespect itself. The insult may have lasted 5 minutes, but the rumination can stretch for weeks. They hurt you once, but you keep hurting yourself every time you relive it. I remember a colleague who made a dismissive, condescending remark to me in a brief hallway conversation one Friday afternoon. His smirk made it clear he enjoyed trying to undermine me. In the moment, I handled it fairly well. I didn't snap back or match his energy. But then I made a critical mistake. I let it consume me. Saturday morning, I replayed the conversation, imagining all the witty comebacks I should have delivered. Saturday afternoon, I was fantasizing about future encounters where I'd finally put him in his place. Saturday night, I lay awake drafting the perfect email to expose his unprofessional behavior. By Sunday, I was still analyzing his motives, venting to friends, and building a mental case against him. And by Monday morning, I was exhausted, bitter, and drained of energy. The truth hit me hard. While he had probably forgotten the entire interaction, I had handed over my entire weekend to him. I had wasted time I could have spent resting, enjoying life, or working on things I cared about. I had become my own worst enemy, continuing his attack long after he had walked away. That's the brutal reality. When you let disrespect consume you, they win twice. Once in the moment they disrespected you, and again every single time you replay it in your head. You become complicit in your own suffering, transforming one brief incident into an endless source of misery. And the cruelest part? They don't even have to lift a finger. You're doing their work for them. The real danger of disrespect isn't always in the moment. It's in how much space you allow it to occupy afterward. And nothing drains your strength more than rumination. Rumination is uniquely destructive because it never produces anything of value. You're not solving the problem. You're not creating a constructive plan of action. You're simply rehearsing your hurt and anger over and over again. Every time you replay the incident in your mind, you're strengthening the same neural pathways tied to that negative experience. In a very real sense, you're training your brain to feel worse about it over time instead of better. Psychologists call this experiential avoidance. You're trying to control and process something that has already ended. But the past is the one thing you absolutely cannot control or change. Every minute spent replaying what happened or obsessing over what you should have said is a minute stolen from your present life and from the possibilities of your future. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Rumination is the opposite of wisdom. It's choosing to be hurt repeatedly by the same event. It's like picking at a wound. Instead of letting it heal, you keep tearing it open, keeping it raw and painful through your own actions. So, how do you protect yourself from this trap? Set a strict time limit for processing the incident. Give yourself 10 minutes, no more, to feel whatever emotions arise. Anger, sadness, disappointment. Acknowledge them as natural, valid responses to disrespectful treatment. But then, make the conscious decision to move on. Use the event as data, not about your inadequacy, but about their character. File it away in your mental database, a note on who they are and how they choose to operate. Then, shift your focus back to your own life. Their 5 minutes of poor behavior do not deserve hours, days, or weeks of your mental energy. And when you catch your mind drifting back to the incident, redirect it immediately. Prepare a healthy distraction in advance. A project you're excited to build, a challenge you're eager to solve, or even a simple reminder of your goals and priorities. Train your mind like a muscle to focus on what you can control moving forward, not on what has already passed. Never forget, your mind is valuable real estate. Why give it away for free to people who don't respect you? Every moment you spend replaying their words is a moment you're not investing in people and things that truly matter. Don't let them take up permanent residence in the most important space you own, your inner peace. When you avoid these 5 mistakes, you not only preserve your dignity, you often earn respect, even from those who first disrespected you. Because when someone disrespects you, they are testing your character. And your response is what shows both them and everyone watching who you really are. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn by how you carry yourself. Remember, the goal is not to win the argument, but to win respect. From others, yes, but most importantly, from yourself. Because in the end, your character is defined not by their actions, but by your reactions. If you're committed to choosing wisdom over emotion, tap that like button to remind yourself of these principles. Subscribe to Stoic Training for more ways to apply ancient philosophy to the challenges of modern life. And share in the comments. Which of these 5 mistakes do you find the hardest to avoid? Your experience could be the very insight that helps someone else grow. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore how to build respect proactively, not just defend it when it's tested. Until then, never forget, your character is revealed by your reactions, not their actions.